And I ended up in Ubud in Bali, which, if you have ever had the good fortune to go to, it's one of those spiritual centers in the world where there is a yogi or a shamanic um, expert or a guru behind every bush, pretty much, waiting to leap out on you and spread some of their magic. And I was invited to a conscious breathwork session. Um, and like all good drug pushers, the first one is free. And then
Right.
after that, you get absolutely hooked.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Temple Podcast. My name is Ed DePasquale, licensed massage therapist and martial artist, and I am here today with Benedict Beaumont from England, residing in Canada, and he is a breathwork specialist. I'm very, very excited to talk to you. So tell me, what made you go from England to Canada?
Good morning, Edward, and thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Before I tell you my story, would it be okay if we just did something first?
Absolutely. I have a feeling we're going to do some breath work.
We are.
Perfect. I was going to ask you to do that later, but let's kick it off right away. Perfect.
Well, there's lots that we can do, but there's just something simple I do almost before I do any meeting with anyone. So I do get some strange looks from accountants and lawyers, but I really felt it kind of brings me into presence. It helps me really establish a rapport with someone. And it's a really simple exercise. It's just taking some breaths together, just
Sure.
coming into presence and just taking some breaths together.
Absolutely.
Is that okay to do that?
100%. I'm for
Amazing.
it.
All right, let's just take 3 or 4 breaths together.
Sure.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. And when I find if I don't do that now at the beginnings of when I sit down to talk to someone, the conversations are never as good. They're never as juicy. They're never as fruitful. There's something about just taking a breath together, even if it's not the same air, that just brings us totally into presence.
Sets the presence and the awareness as well. And you notice the phenomenon in Tai Chi class all the time, very rapidly, is that even people who've never taken a Tai Chi or a Qigong class before, when we start doing breath together, everyone eventually syncs up. And then once people sync up, it becomes that like a candle in a room. My teacher talks about that all the time. Like, you have one candle in a room, and the candles only emit so much light, but when you have multiple candles, the light is much, much brighter. And then our energy works the same way, and we connect that with each other through the timing and the connection of our breath. It's a really amazing phenomenon. So how did you get into breath work?
Well, I got into breathwork in 2014. By that point, I was already in my early 40s, and I'd always been looking for a reason or a purpose in life. I don't know if when you were at school, you had those really irritating kids who always knew what they wanted to do.
Yes.
I
was not one of them.
No, I wasn't one of them. And I was always very jealous of that. I used to take the Mickey out of them, but I was also very jealous of them. I wanted to have a life's purpose. I wanted to have meaning. I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something special. I wanted to have a calling in life. And throughout my first, 40 years, I never really had that. And I did a whole lot of different things. In my 20s, I was a wannabe rock star, and I went around in bands and playing in gigs. I flirted with making films. Then I tried to do something meaningful with my life, and I was a practicing Buddhist for many years, practicing yoga for a long time. And I also trained to be a high school teacher, a secondary school teacher, we call them in England. So I felt I was doing something really useful and purposeful with my life, but there was still something missing. working in the education system, whatever your internal compass is doing, it's a brutal profession to be in. And so I kind of burnt out by the time I was 38, 39. And then I decided I was going to let all that go and just see what happened. And I ended up in Ubud in Bali, which, if you have ever had the good fortune to go to, is one of those spiritual centers in the world where there is a yogi or a shamanic expert or a guru behind every bush, pretty much, waiting to leap out on you and spread some of their magic. And I was invited to a conscious breathwork session. And like all good drug pushers, the first one is free. And then after that, you get absolutely hooked. And so that was my experience. By that point, I'd already been meditating for sort of 7 or 8 years, pretty hardcore, doing, Buddhist Tibetan meditation. And I've been on a yoga mat for, 10, 15 years. But within 5 breaths of that first breath work, I was in a place, a deeper, more profound place than I'd ever been to before, a place of healing and transformation that I didn't even know existed. And another 5 breaths after that, I thought, okay, everything I knew before doesn't really matter. And I've found my calling.
So what was so different about the breaths that you were taking there versus any kind of breathing you had been doing previously in yoga?
The technique is different. So in yoga, most of the time, we are trying to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. So many of the exercises that you may have heard of, like alternate nostril breathing or coherence breath or box breathing, are really to help you calm down, to kind of really relax. Excellent for meditation. The technique we were using in conscious breath work is sometimes called conscious connected breathing or connected breathing, which was a technique developed in the 1960s by Stan Grof. And it works on the sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight and freeze reflex, which is a really odd thing to think about. Why do you want to stimulate that kind of fight and flight reflex in you? Why do you want to really activate your system? Because normally we only ever do that if we are in one of those life-threatening situations. If you do that in a really safe and protected environment where you are held, where you are completely physically and psychologically safe, amazing things start to happen.
It's interesting that you say the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic nervous system. I speak about that a lot, especially as a massage therapist. The parasympathetic nervous system is basically what we're looking to activate. That's on the table. That's the purpose of the atmosphere of massage. Is not just to get you to spend extra money because I put lavender on the table or something like that and I tried to relax you. That's not the point. The point is, again, to allow the client to heal and get that same rest, relaxation, and recovery that they would get in 8 hours of sleep and an hour and a half on my table. That being said, as a martial artist, we train to activate the sympathetic system so we can then learn to control it. But in the opposite manner, where we put ourselves in danger on purpose to learn how to stay calm throughout, or at least synthesize danger, the presence of danger. So it's controlled, where you have headgear and gloves on and no one's really trying to kill you, but at the same time you still have that fear and panic and you learn the ability to overcome. So now, how through breath work would you activate the sympathetic nervous system?
The technique that we use is an extraordinary activating technique. It's almost like super oxygenating your body, really filling it with air, which is a little bit like filling it with full of prana or life force or chi. And when we do this, our bodies does something with that energy, something really profound. And because our bodies are very wise, at their very level, they know what they need to do with that energy. Does that make sense?
In a way, it makes sense. I mean, in the same way that, throughout Chinese medicine, your kidneys are going to be the things that kind of like the battery that drives your body. Your body knows where to send and what to do with said energies and what organs are responsible then for those energies.
Yeah, that's it exactly. I could talk about it and I could explain it more, but maybe a demonstration here might be a perfect time to do it.
All right, let's do it. I'm ready. So everybody at home, I hope you're not driving. I hope you're ready to do some breath work. Anybody who's listening to this, and you're okay with me. I do cut the episodes into clips. So are you okay with me like cutting this into a clip and posting just this as well?
Of course.
All right, fantastic. So let's get started.
So we're going to do maybe 2 minutes of conscious connected breath work. Now, this is fine to do just as a 2-minute practice if you've never done it before, if you're listening to a podcast, but please don't do anything longer than this because there are some contraindications. So you've already mentioned not to do this if you're driving or operating heavy machinery.
Yes.
You don't want any exercises to do this. Normally we do it lying down or sitting down so you can be supported whilst you do it. For 2 minutes, there aren't really any contraindications, but for a longer session, we would always say, please go very, very gently and carefully if you suffer from heart conditions or extreme of blood pressure, if you have a history of psychosis, if you're schizophrenic or bipolar, or if you're on heavy medication for any of that. It's not to say that it's not beneficial, but it's just very activating, and we wouldn't want to trigger anyone into a condition, into an episode. Similarly, pregnancy, especially early or unstable pregnancy, it's best to go very, very gently with this. Okay, so that's the kind of contraindications. And we're just going to do a 2-minute conscious practice together, which is completely safe to do by yourself. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, find yourself a place where you can just be still and quiet and undisturbed for a couple of minutes, and then find yourself a supported position, either sitting or lying down. Now I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. Just take some breaths, not in any particular style, and just go inside. Find that still, quiet place within. That's it. Now stay in that place. And when we breathe, when we consciously breathe, our bodies know what to do with that breath. And in just 2 minutes, we're going to send our breath somewhere. And I'm just going to invite you to just feel into it where you might be feeling stuck in your life. Is there some blockages that you are having? Is there an issue or a conflict? Something that is weighing heavy on your heart? Something that you need some clarity on? So I'm just going to invite you just to feel into what that might be for you. And everyone has them. So where would you like some light and some clarity, some clearing? And we are going to breathe in a particular technique called conscious connected breath. So when you're ready, please follow along with these instructions. Open your mouth wide, really wide. Okay? Give your jaw a wiggle. And we're going to keep our mouth as open and wide as we can. That's it. Now start taking full body breaths. That's it, breathing into every part of your body. Keep breathing. That's it. Now, the most important step is to keep your breath connected. That means no pauses at the top and no pauses at the bottom. Like a wave coming in and a wave going out. That's it. Finally, really pull on the inhale, but just let go on the exhale. Let it all go. That's it. Let your breath fall into a rhythm. That's beautiful breathing. Trust your body. Send that prana, that life force, that energy that you are pulling in to where it needs to go. And there may be physical healing. If there's a place in your body that needs some extra love and attention, but maybe it's something emotional. Is there something you're not letting yourself feel? Do you need to feel something? Is it sadness or grief or anger or fear? Something you don't let yourself feel very often. We've got a minute now to really breathe and let yourself feel. Maybe there's someone you need to feel connected to. Maybe you need to feel love. Let yourself feel that. Keep your mouth wide. That's it. Keep your breath full. We have 30 more seconds to breathe. That's it. Let all that beautiful air come in. That's it. Keep breathing, keep feeling. That's all you have to do. Let yourself feel. Connect with what no longer wants to be separated. Let's take 5 more deep breaths together. And one more. Now close your mouth. Breathe through your nose. Keep your eyes closed. And just be aware of how you are feeling physically right now, because there will be some physical changes. Come back into your body. Just bring your hands up and just start to open and close your fists. Wriggle your fingers. Just move your shoulders gently. Blink your eyes open. And give yourself a little tap. Just a bit of grounding here just to bring you back. Because conscious breathing is a very powerful technique. Even just with 2 minutes of breathing, we start to put ourselves in an altered state of consciousness. And you can give your hands a shake too. We'll put ourselves into an altered state of consciousness, which has physical effects on our body as well. And after breath work, we always have the opportunity to share about our experience.
100%. I mean, it feels like, so as you start to practice, some people have it from day one, some people it takes years and years to cultivate, but you are taught in Qigong to feel your body's energy. And as a practitioner, you can feel when that's really resonating through all the cells. And just in 2 minutes, I felt, that tingling and the warmth in my hands. I felt the resonation and the vibration throughout my whole body. I feel that same frequency that we get from long periods of Qigong or long periods of form work. And then you also feel I'm energized. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do. I'm ready to work. And I feel good. My big thing now, as you know, I'm at the start of a new business and a new podcast and lots of new projects, is money is the biggest thing that is that's my big thing. Money is my big thing. So I feel that. I immediately feel that in my throat. And I notice that there's this tension in my throat that's kind of always there that I attribute to allergies or whatever it may be. But over the course of the couple minutes of breathing, it starts to dissolve. And then as soon as I say the word and I still have those attachments to it, I feel that tension in my throat again. So now that we're done and I say it and I feel that emotional attachment to the word, again, I feel that same tension in my throat.
That is beautiful, Edward. And, I'm getting goosebumps just hearing you say that. You felt the tension in your throat. And there were words, and there was about money, that financial energy that is present for you. And just speaking and releasing it, or allowing at least an opportunity for that to come out. That's amazing, feeling that release. I can feel that. I can feel that from here.
It's very powerful, especially when two people are communicating with one another. The distance is relevant. The distance doesn't matter. It's almost the proof that there's something more to just this physical reality that we then have, knowing that at a distance you can still connect with people.
Absolutely.
100%. So what is it for you? What is the thing that drives you to continue doing this?
Well, when I did my first breath work, I felt an incredible shift within myself. Now, I'm not religious. I don't have a belief system. You know, I grew up in England, which is a vaguely Christian country at the best of times.
I think we
But
can relate. Me being in New York, I grew up in a split Protestant and Roman Catholic family, so I get it.
um, I on my first breath work, I saw angels. And for someone who's an atheist who doesn't believe in any kind of supernatural, especially not the kind of the traditional Christian kind of, you know, iconography, for someone to see beings of light, I was like, oh goodness. Um, and when I started to, you know, to do more breath work, and I had these incredible emotional breakthroughs, I had huge amounts of insight, and not just on an emotional level, but on a mental level, on a spiritual and on a physical level. I kind of thought, wow. And the difference with this, with so many other disciplines, and you know, I'd already been around the block on the spiritual merry-go-round, if you like. I'd been, you know, done yoga and I'd done Buddhism. I'd studied all sorts of philosophy. The breath is something we all have as a gift of birthright. We all have it. We do it every second. It's something that we can all do. It's accessible and it's pretty much free. So I was like, okay, I've got to learn how to do this. I sometimes describe breathwork as meditation for those people who can't meditate, or therapy for those people who can't do therapy, and plant medicine for those people who don't do drugs, because it can have the same instantaneous effect of healing and transformation as any of those things. But it is so much quicker, so much easier. There's no mysticism. There's no you know, nonsense around it. There's no belief system that you have to subscribe to. We're simply breathing.
Right. It's about, for me particularly, it's about being very open. To share a little bit of my backstory, and I'm sorry for the people who've heard me say this 1,000 times. We've just never, the two of us have never spoken before. So a bit of my backstory is when I did drugs early. Like I was in high school. I was, 15, 16. This is when I really started getting into experimenting and doing different things, and never hallucinogens, just really kind of like what was around in the town, which was really more the hardcore stuff. You're talking like opium, coke, a lot of marijuana, lots of drinking, stuff like that. And I had joined a youth group when I was 17, 18 years old to kind of get away. And I did the double life thing for a long time. So in that, I've had a lot of experiences that were induced, and I've had a lot of experiences that were religious, and I've had a lot of experiences after I had separated myself from all of those things and kind of chased a life of meditation and martial arts. I wouldn't subscribe to say that I was a Buddhist, but I definitely followed a lot of Buddhist principles. And I still don't say, I say that I'm a spiritual person because I have personal evidence that there's more to this universe than just this physical reality. However, I don't subscribe to a religion. I would just say that I'm naturally spiritual, and whatever is whatever is, and I'm open to the interpretation of whatever could be. I had a long meditation with a group of friends in which I experienced what my definition of would be my guides, who present themselves to me as different animals. And that's what I resonate with, and that's what I see. It doesn't necessarily even mean that those things are real, but they are for me. So
Absolutely.
now, and the same thing with you as a person who isn't spiritual, isn't religious, so to speak. Would you say that those angels that you saw, from your point of view, would that be more a kind of a psychosomatic manifestation of iconography that you attributed a certain feeling to, or would it be more so that you felt like you were actually truly connected to perhaps another dimension, or that you were really being visited by these light beings that were giving you a mission to do?
That's a really interesting question, Edward, and I like the way that you explained it yourself really well. I also believe there is more to life than just a material existence that we live in, and I'm not going to try and explain what that is. Everyone has to come to their own experience of that. And for me, at that time in that breathwork, I experienced that as beings of light, separate from me. But in other breathworks that I've done, I have also really connected with my animal spirit guides, for instance. And I've really connected with more shamanic kind of forces. And I've connected with, just the feeling of divinity, of the sacredness of the earth and everything in it. So there's no one experience that I would say I have had through breath work that has, made me think this is the answer. But it's more just being open to the different experiences that being human and being alive just really offer us. And breath work isn't the only way, as you know, to experience all that it is to be human. There are so many different paths, but I became a breathwork facilitator just because that's the easiest, cheapest way that I've come across so far to do it. But I think you answered the question yourself, to be honest.
In what way? Please reiterate.
So the way that you explained how it just appeared to you at that time, and that was your interpretation of the existence out there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I feel like that it's that way for everybody as well, and I don't think there's anything wrong with ascribing to thinking that this is it. It's whatever resonates with you, and it's whatever lets you lead a happier life. But I do find that when people do start experiencing more, they tend to be a little bit more open-minded and a little bit more compassionate. And less likely to follow the herd. You know what I mean? Less likely to follow the herd. You become much more driven by, much more God, how do I put this? Self-reliant. You know what I mean? Your beliefs are much more self-reliant. You look less to outside to tell you what to believe, and you're more able to take in information and then give back what your interpretation of that is, which I think is also especially important with everything that's going on today. There's so much, bipartisan jargon. There's so much anger. There's so much that people don't deal with. I got into a particular conversation with somebody online recently who was a friend of mine. It wasn't just some random person. I've known this person for a very long time, and we don't see eye to eye on many things, but we always discuss it. However, this particular instance, it seems a lot like I would explain myself and then they would reiterate their point again. It seems like people aren't willing to open themselves up to new ideas or willing to accept that there may be more than what they're being fed by the outside media and by the outside world. And for lack of a better term, I feel like understanding something as simple as being able to take 2 minutes and do some breath work or do some kind of practice that's going to center you and ground you and make you at peace and one with yourself lets you cut through the bullshit. It really lets you cut through the bullshit of everything that's out there. It's so difficult now to find the truth in things, to find the reality in the mysticism that the media creates. I feel like we're living in these very confusing times, and it can be very, very paramount to find a couple of minutes to take for you. And some breath work is perfect. I've been looking up stuff on YouTube. What your technique reminds me of something I've heard called, I think, dragon's breath or fire breathing or some I believe is one of the something
breath of
similar.
fire.
Breath of fire, yes, that's it.
Kapalabhati in Sanskrit, or if you're a yoga follower, it's a slightly different technique. Breath of fire uses the belly much more, and is much more disciplined and is much more controlled, whereas conscious connected breathing is much more open and much freer. There is lots of different names for it. Holotropic is the original name for this technique, but there's many different schools now.
For the conscious connected breathing.
For the conscious connected breathing, yeah.
Holotropic. That's
holotropic.
Okay. Now, have your students? What's a big change that you could say you've seen in some of your students? Like, let's hear about some success stories from some of the people that you've worked with.
Sure, some testimonials of people.
Absolutely.
I always am slightly wary about this, because some of the things that I hear and some of the things people say can sound quite miraculous, because people have breakthroughs and transformations, really profound ones, really big ones. And then there are, smaller ones as well that people might have. So I have seen experiences range from, one is springing to mind. In a workshop that I did back in England about a year ago, I had an older gentleman come into my workshop. He was in his 70s. And most of the people that I get in, I suppose are in the range of about 30 to 60. So it was a bit rare, not completely uncommon for someone who was a bit older to come in. But he was a very well-dressed gentleman, very well-spoken. Not the usual kind of person that comes in, but you know, we did the breath work, and it was a group breath work, so there was about 15, 20 people breathing. And then after the breath works can get very, very emotional, by the way. They can have all sorts of emotions happening in a room. Now, we did a 2-minute breath work, by the way, but normally we'll do it for 60 minutes and set to music. And the music will kind of start gently, but it will reach peaks and troughs, and I'll be guiding people through it. And it can get very emotional. And you will have people having from experiences from, you know, almost like orgasms to almost like terror attacks of being fear. People will actually express vocally. And
It's whatever they need to purge and release.
That's right.
You
That's
would
it,
say,
exactly.
yes.
And this gentleman sobbed the whole way through his breath work, just uncontrollable crying. And afterwards, he shared that his wife had died. His wife of over 40 years had died 2 years previously of cancer. She passed. And he had not been able to cry, had not been able to mourn her passing, his life partner, the love of his life. And he'd not been able to not just cry, but express any emotion about it. He'd not been even able to feel the grief. And so for just an hour, we turned on that tap, if you like. We opened that doorway, and he was held, and he was safe, and he was able to feel the sadness of losing a life partner. And he left. I can't say that he was smiling, but he was lighter. He was lighter, and he wasn't holding it in. He wasn't bottling it up. He wasn't so tense. And I have examples like that every single time I do a breathwork. There is something. Someone will share an experience that they have every single time I do a breathwork.
For people who will hear that and then be, I don't know, put off a little bit by hearing a story like, oh, he was crying, it must not be good. That is amazing. That is fantastic. The weight of those emotions is a cancer inside the body and will eat away at you physically. The energy of those emotions is going to wear down on you and cause a cascading failure, especially at an advanced age in a generation where you said he's a little older, like in his 70s. Yeah. I mean, that generation worldwide, don't cry, don't show emotion, don't anything. So your initial reaction to everything is to bottle it up, you know? Yeah. I saw my grandfather go through it. My grandfather was passing away of cancer, and he was 75 when he passed. And, you know, he had fought in Korea and never talked about it. He had, you know, he confessed things as he was going. He expressed emotions in fits of, you know, half in, half out of consciousness, not quite lucid as he was passing and unable to filter these things that he had kept repressed and bottled for most of his life, started to come out in his passing or in dreams. I remember he never talked about PTSD. He never talked about anything like that. Back in the day, they called it shell shock. Meanwhile, he had a nightmare when I was a kid about having to fight a Korean off of him. And he broke his foot on his nightstand, kicking in his sleep. So that was a real thing that happened to him, was a Korean was over him with a bayonet trying to kill him, and he had to fight this man and end his life to save his own because he was a soldier in a war. But this generation is taught to repress that. You know, so especially for somebody of that age group, of that generation, that is taught that men are not supposed to experience, men are not supposed to feel, men are not supposed to have those emotions. You're the protectors, you're the strong ones. That's for women who are weak. None of that is true, and you're allowed to feel those things. And for whoever is listening that needs to hear this, you're allowed to feel those things, and this could be exactly what you need in order to release the things that you need to release in order to just live a better life. And like you said, lighter, he may not have been, I mean, he's finally mourning the loss of his wife. He's supposed to be sad in that moment. Yeah. That's okay. But the beauty of it is now he gets to experience that emotion, whereas he would walk around with stress and anguish and probably a little bit of self-loathing, beating himself up over not being able to feel said emotion. It's a very powerful thing. It's a very, very powerful thing.
And you understand it, and I'm really glad that I don't have to explain it, because you explained that very passionately. One of the other things that just strikes me as you're speaking is we are probably amongst the first generations in human existence that kind of understand this and have a chance to do something about it. Because trauma that is stored in the body isn't just stored in our body, it can kind of be inherited. It can get passed down through generations. And this is the first time that we, almost as a human race, have got the ability to step up and say, okay, this is going to end now. We are going to actually consciously try and heal some of the trauma, some of the stress, some of the damage, and some of the pain that gets locked into not just our own physical bodies, but into our own culture as well, our own society.
100%. It's not just energy. It's belief systems.
Yeah.
You believe this and you pass it on to your children, and then even if let's say it's a percentile thing, even if it's 100% and you unlearn 20% of it, you still have 80% of that same trauma, trauma-inducing belief system that gets passed down from generation to generation to generation. And we just chip away and chip away and chip away and chip away. And I feel like we're finally at a spot where we're like, let's just clear it. Let's clear it out.
And so I kind of feel like I have a responsibility to do this as well. Like I feel almost inside of me a compulsion that I need to do this, not just for my own healing and transformation, and not just for the people who are around me who I touch, but also for the generations to come, which does sound kind of grandiose. And it does sound, very, I don't know, megalomaniac almost, but I really feel that we are at an opportunity now where we can, I'm not saying that we can cure everything or heal the world, but we can start that process in a way I don't think that has happened before.
Well, there's 7.4, I think, at this moment, or 7.6 billion people on this planet. So even if you, through your business and through this podcast, let's say this affects 1 million people. And if 1 million people listen to this podcast, it's going to be a popular, successful show, right? But that million is still like 0.4, like 0.04% of the people on the earth. How many other people are unaffected? You have to, it's not about being a megalomaniac or being egotistical. I just had a long conversation with a friend of mine about this the other day, about imposter syndrome, as you start to become this person who is potentially, you're in charge, you're teaching the class. That makes you a leader. So people often look at people in leadership positions and they say, like, what makes them qualified or what makes them able to be up there? And the real answer is just, the few components of leadership that I find very important is, first and foremost, willingness to be wrong. You have to not have enough of it. You have to, be in control of your ego, because your ego is there for a reason. But you have to be in control of your ego enough to accept being wrong, apologize, correct the mistake, and move on. You have to be able to listen to the advice of the people around you, so you're not so much a leader as you are a conduit of the people that you surround yourself with. You have to be willing to be the fall guy, because everybody's going to look at you, which means you have to be of strong will and strong character. And you have to be willing to basically not be able to be that dude that goes and hangs out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really go to parties. I don't really do anything. I'm teaching classes. I'm teaching private lessons. I'm training so I can make sure I'm on top of my stuff. I'm doing this podcast. I'm talking to people. I'm setting up appointments. I'm building a business. Because I know that if I'm the person that's in that position, that I'll do good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that when I get there, I'll be one of the people who's there and doing good. You know what I mean? Instead of using it for ill-gotten gains and stuff like that. But those are the components of real, true leadership. And on top of that, what that comes with is this imposter syndrome talk in the back of your head, kind of like, like you don't deserve to be where you're at. I need to make sure that that this isn't because it's ego driven. You know what I mean? Because I know, but I also second guess myself sometimes and wonder. So like, I have to let you know that it's not ego driven, because I'm reminding myself that it's not ego driven. But really, it's just, whoever's going to think ill is going to think ill, and whoever's ready to accept your message is going to be right there to accept it. 100%.
Perfect.
Just like you had the thing that came to mind when you said you had reservations about telling stories, because some of them can be so miraculous. Whoever is going to hear that story and be like, oh, it's too good to be true, and turn it off, they're just not ready. They're just not ready to hear it. The person who's ready to hear it is going to soak in that story, and they're going to listen to it again and again and again, and they're going to show their friends that video. They're going to show their friends this episode. They're going to go, hey, fast forward to 17 minutes and listen to this story, or however long it had been at that point. You know what I mean?
I do.
So I'm sorry I went off on a tangent, but
you go for it. I'm loving it.
I apologize. I do that from time to time. I went off on a tangent. But yeah, I'm just very impassioned and emboldened about things like that. I believe everybody at some point in their life is going to have to step into a leadership role, and that it really isn't so much that there's this one person who's going to rule things and everybody else is going to follow. But at some point in certain aspects of your life, everybody's going to have to be able to be in a leadership position. Exactly. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what you are when you're at the head of that classroom. You know, so through your guidance, these people get to heal and get to learn techniques that they can then trickle down and trickle down and trickle down. And we had gotten onto this rant by the thought process of, you had said, like, not to be a megalomaniac, but if not save the world, but it's the ripples in a pond.
I also fully embrace my inner megalomaniac, my inner messiah. I've got, I'm very good friends with my inner messiah.
Me too. I mean, they call me Ginger Jesus. So, you know what I mean? Like, I decided to grow my hair out, and I wasn't getting rid of the beard because I look like I'm 12. And my girlfriend's like, "You look like Christ." I'm like, "Thank you. I'll take it as a compliment."
I can't do Christ, but I could maybe go for a Buddha.
You could do a Buddha or Gandhi.
Yeah, I could do that, couldn't I?
You could. You got to rock it. You just got to own it. I said if I ever start to go, I'm just gonna bick it and just own it.
That's what I did when I was in my late 30s. It's a very, very painful process, losing your hair. And what I discovered, as well with the grief of that passing, I discovered a love of hats. So it's like I actually gained a whole new way of existence, and I'm a big fan of all sorts of different hats now.
It's all self-expression, how you wear your hair, what you do with yourself, what you put on your body, what you wear. It's all self-expression, and it's all wonderful. It's all wonderful. I don't understand judgment. You know what I mean? I don't understand judgment. But in any case, yeah, I'm 31 now, and it's hanging on. So like, I hope so, but at the same time, like, I'll accept it if it goes. It's all good. No big deal. I'll just change my Facebook avatar. These are the important things. But nevertheless, so what prompted you to go from England to Canada? Because I find a lot of people going to Canada.
That was actually the first question you asked me, so I'm sorry I got distracted and went down a rabbit hole there.
I mean, rabbit holes, this is a long-form conversation show. Rabbit holes are what keep it going.
I'm very happy to say that it was love that brought me over here, Edward.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. So your wife, husband?
My wife is Canadian.
Yes.
And she, we've been married now for 6 years, together for 7.
Congratulations.
We lived in it. Thank you very much. In fact, you're definitely going to be the last person or the last podcast that I do before we become parents, because we are due to have a little girl join us in the next 2 or 3 days.
Oh, congratulations. That's very, very soon. That's awesome. So I guess your phone must be on, ready to go, huh?
Yeah, well, no, I work from home, so she's just behind this curtain here now, in fact.
Just like waiting to see like a little hand pop out, like, hey, here we are, here we go. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. It's always funny where life takes you, I had always said, I made a joke yesterday that like my hometown is nefarious for people never leaving or leaving and then moving right back. And now I'm one town away. So I had gone to the other side of the island. I live on Long Island in New York. And I had gone to like the other side of the island. I was like, eventually I'm going to move to Middle America. And now I'm like one town away. And I'm like, I don't know if I can leave. And maybe, so you never know how it's going to work out. My business is across the street. You know what I mean? It just is the way that it is sometimes. You never know where life is going to take you. But in the same way that you discovered breathwork and felt emboldened and impassioned to do it and felt like you had to, I felt the same way about becoming a black belt. I felt the same way about doing what I was doing in the martial arts. And, training Shaolin Kung Fu is it's a lifelong journey. It's so much to learn. And there's so many reasons why we still keep these arts alive and why there's so much to learn. You know, when you're, especially at, like, you're at a real school, it's a physical practice, it's a spiritual practice, it's a meditative practice. It's huge. I felt that same calling to do. So I definitely understand that. So, how did you take that first lesson? What was the journey from that first lesson in Bali to starting your own business?
That's another good question, actually. So I knew on my first breathwork I trained to be a facilitator, but it wasn't the right time in my life to train to do breathwork. But whenever I got the opportunity, I'd meet with my teacher, the first person who introduced me to breathwork, who's a guy called Antonio Bagnano from a school called Alchemy of Breath, and he's still my teacher, and we're still close personal friends. Whenever he lived in Bali, and whenever he came over to England, I'd go to his workshops. But then 2 or 3 years later, I was in a position where I could undertake deeper training in it. So I did my training, and I qualified in 2018. And then I pretty much set up Breathing Space after that. I'm a high school teacher by training, so I have a background in education, and I always knew that what I would want to do is to set up my own school, because almost my entire career in what I've been doing, in all sorts of different things that I've done. I worked in hospitality for quite a long time as well. I was a chef and a manager of hotels up in the French Alps. So the first thing I did, I started running retreats, because I trained to be a yoga teacher at the same time as well. So I started running retreats, and I ran 20 retreats in 2 years between 2018 and 2019. All over the world, from Ibiza to the Alps to several in Glastonbury and in England. And that was my business for the first couple of years. But I always knew when I'd be coming over to Canada, my participants were in Europe, so I wouldn't be able to carry on the same business model. And that's when I took my business online, and I started training people online to be breathwork facilitators. So it was a pretty seamless, when I look back on it now, it's like I had a master plan. But it just kind of worked out at the time.
It's just riding the flow. You're just riding the wave. You know what I mean? It's like it seems like things work out in a way that, oh, you must have intended it to be this way. It's like, nah, dude, I just walked through the doors when they opened.
That's when you know it's right, is when it's easy and it flows and it all just kind of comes. That's when you know you're on the right path. When it's effortless.
I mean, like, certain things are going to require effort. You know what I mean? Like certain,
maybe fun is a good.
I think fun. I think fun. It seems effortless. Like on the outside,
the outside looking in,
a crazy person. Like, Jen will be like, that's my girlfriend. Jen will be like,
my wife's called Jen as well.
Oh, really? That's so funny. But Jen will be like, can we hang out tonight? I'll be like, didn't we? Oh, that was a week ago. Okay, yeah. I guess I'll put the computer away. You know what I mean? Like, it's you don't realize it. It's just you're grinding because you love it, and you feel like you have. Not even that you feel like you have to, like somebody's got a gun to your head, but it's your life would be better doing the work than not doing the work.
Definitely.
So, what's your website called again?
It's Make Some Breathing Space.
MakeSomeBreathingSpace.com.
Yeah, Breathing Space is the name of my company, and the website is MakeSomeBreathingSpace.com.
MakeSomeBreathingSpace.com. Is there something else about breathwork that you'd like to discuss that you think would be pertinent? We've got a visitor now. I got Jack over here.
I had to leave my my black cat at home with my parents in England, so
maybe this is his way of saying hello, sending a message. Yeah, he's one of 3 black cats.
Wow.
And there's a calico here as well.
What a gift.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's again, on the outside looking in, seems like a zoo, but you're just surrounded by life, and it's kind of awesome. Every animal. There's a couple dogs too. Every animal has their own personality, and they're a lot of fun to take care of and constantly be surrounded by. I have the Shiba Inu. Probably, I can guarantee you, I'll open the door to this room, and she's waiting for me to come out, like with her butt pressed up against the door, like laying down, waiting to come outside. So it's nice to constantly have. I talk about them all the time. It's nice to kind of always have this life. Be surrounded by life, you know what I mean? You're never really alone,
Yeah. So, what else would I say about breath work? Well, I really would. I'm passionate about it. It's my purpose in life. So, I would love to encourage anyone who listens to your podcast to breathe more, to feel more, because that's where our breath gets us. It connects us more with ourselves and with other people. And it doesn't matter if it's it can be with anyone, because there's so many good breathwork facilitators out there. Breathwork is the easiest, most powerful, quickest way to connect with what you really need to feel. If you would like to connect with me more, I've got loads of free stuff on my website. So I've got several free introductory courses, which have got videos and places to discuss. I host a online workshop every Thursday. That's it will be at 5:30 EST. It's at 8:30 p.m. UK time. So that's normally 1:30 where I am in Mountain Time. It's normally probably 3:30 actually for those on EST, and that's where we run an hour's workshop with a 30-minute conscious breath work set to music, and that will either be me or a breathing space facilitator that leads that. And if you feel called to go deeper, I have foundation courses and facilitator training courses. But I would love, and honestly, I haven't got anything particular to plug. I'm just passionate about breathwork, and I'd love more people to do any kind of breathwork, whether it's conscious breathwork or even just techniques such as nostril breathing or coherence breathing or box breathing or breath of fire or any yogic breathing, because it all is good. We're all just trying to get the world to breathe, to feel, and to heal and to transform.
Everything boils down to the breath. It's amazing that you can go a couple weeks without food, you can go a few days without water, but you can't go more than a few minutes without breathing, unless you're highly, highly, highly trained. Like David Blaine is not the example. You know what I mean? He's the phenom. He's not the person that you look to for like what's humanly possible. Exactly. I can't hold my breath for more than 2 minutes. And it's really something that there is a lot of free stuff on his website. Definitely, guys, definitely take a look at it. It's makesomebreathingspace.com. Makesomebreathingspace.com. I think this is a great place for us to end the recording. If you'd ever like to come back, please come on. Guys, Temple Podcast, go to anchor.fm/Temple Podcast or patreon.com/Temple Podcast if you guys would like to record the show. And sir, again, thank you so much for coming on and leading us through some breath work. Would you like to end the episode with a technique or an exercise or something else that we could do as we close?
I would love to, actually, Edward. That's a real gift. Thank you.
Thank you for doing so. I really appreciate it.
I think actually what we'll do is just something very similar to how we started. So not a particular technique, but I'd like you to just sit comfortably and close your eyes and go in. Just feel your body first. Feel the air coming in and out of your body as your chest rises and falls. Feel the breath coming in and out of your nose, cool as it comes in. And then on an inhale, take your awareness inside to that still, quiet place where your truest, wisest, highest self lives. And just connecting with that part of you for a moment. And then, still staying in that place, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes and just connect with me as we take 3 final breaths together. Thank you, Edward. It's been a real honor.
Thank you, sir.
To be with you today.
I really, really, really appreciate it. Much needed for me today. I feel so much better than when I was gearing up to start the recording. I was a little worried and stressed, and now I'm feeling great, and I really appreciate. This is a very powerful episode, a very pertinent episode, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. Again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, do all the things that you do with social media, and check him out at makesomebreathingspace.com. Benedict Beaumont, thank you so much for coming on, sir. I'm going to end the recording. Don't hang up yet. Thanks, guys.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine